हेलो। 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 टेस्ट। हेलो। है भाई, क्या बोलूं यार। भाई बोलिए यार, कुछ नवीन बैठ कर बोल दे यार, टेस्ट करना भाई। हेलो हेलो, माइक टेस्टिंग, माइक टेस्टिंग। वेलकम टू ऑल IIFT members and staff and faculty. We are grateful to hear हमारे एक हो रही है, हमारी आवाज चल एक हो रही है क्या? तो आ रही है ना, मतलब यूट्यूब पे आ रही है। तो आप हेलो हेलो हेलो। हेलो। आ रही है मेरी आवाज, नहीं आ रही? यूट्यूब पे तो आ रही है, लेकिन उसमें नहीं आ रही भाई।
अभी यही रखें, मैं आपको एक और भेजती हूँ। आपका ईमेल बताना। क्या भेजो, कहाँ पे भेजो? हाँ, मुझे व्हाट्सअप करिए मेरी।
हेलो हेलो, और कैलाश भाई क्या हाल है? केवल भाई, आवाज आ रही है मेरी? माइक टेस्टिंग, माइक टेस्टिंग। हेलो हेलो। ये बाहर देना है, इधर के लिए बोल रहे हो? आवाज बढ़ाओ थोड़ी सी, कह रहे इसकी माइक। हेलो हेलो हेलो, आ रही है केवल भाई आवाज? आ रही है, बिल्कुल डन है मेरी आवाज। और जी केवल भाई, बहुत बढ़िया, आपकी तारीफ हो गई, बहुत बढ़िया, कॉन्ग्रेचुलेशन। माइक टेस्टिंग, माइक टेस्टिंग। हेलो हेलो। हेलो हेलो। ओके भाई। यूट्यूब में चेक करो दोबारा भाई। हाँ, तो मैं आवाज आ रही है, रिकॉर्ड कर लिया। यहाँ से
जब आप कोई और काम
तो Let us.
ये ऑन है? कौन है यहाँ पे? आईटी का?
आईटी
कौन है?
नहीं नहीं
A very good morning to the respected Vice Chancellor, Professor Rakesh Mohan Joshi, our guest of honor, Shri Rajarshi Gupta, MD and CEO, ONGC Videsh Limited, our keynote addressee, Professor Elena Spazova, Dean, Henley Business School, University of Reading, respected Center Head, IIFT Kolkata, Professor K. Rangarajan, our honorable academic community, faculty, students, and researchers. Welcome to the first edition of Global Business Research Conference 2025 of Indian Institute of Foreign Trade. In the Indian Institute of Foreign Trade, a premier B school established in 1963, an autonomous body under Ministry of Commerce and Industry, Government of India, has had a significant contribution in nation building for the past 62 years in skill building for external trade sector of India. It has come a long way to successfully develop into a unique institution involved in imparting knowledge through research and training in international business and trade. The GBRC conference in its first edition has acknowledged the multi-domain perspectives to understand the more contemporary needs of international business in global order. With this, I welcome you all to Indian Institute of Foreign Trade. May I please call upon our dignitaries on the dais for lighting of lamp and mark a formal start to GBRC 2025, followed by Saraswati Vandana. या कुन्देन्दु तुषार हार धवला या शुभ्रवस्त्रावृता या वीणावरदण्ड मण्डितकरा या श्वेतपद्मासना या ब्रह्माच्युत शङ्कर प्रभृतिभिः देवै सदा वन्दिता सा मा पातु सरस्वती भगवती निशेषजाड्यापहा. May I now request our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor Rakesh Mohan Joshi, to kindly felicitate Shri Rajarshi Gupta, MD and CEO, ONGC Videsh. I kindly request Professor Ashish Pandey, Head Research and Conference Chair, to felicitate Professor Elena Spazova, Dean, Henley Business School. I now request Professor Ashish Pandey, Head Research and Conference Chair, to deliver the welcome address to the August gathering.
So our honorable guest of honor, Managing Director and CEO ONGC Limited, Shri Rajrishi Gupta ji, our Vice Chancellor Professor Rakesh Mohan Joshi ji, our keynote speaker, Dean Henley Business School, University of Readings, Professor Elena, esteemed delegates, faculty members, administrative staff led by our registrar, Shri Gaurav Gulati, our students and dear participants. I'd like to welcome you all on the maiden research-based conference in all the areas of business management, which IIFT is holding for the first time. Global Business Research Conference 2025, with the theme Beyond Boundaries, Reimagining Research for a Globalized World. I'd like to start with a quote: small minds discuss people, average minds discuss events, and great minds discuss ideas. The conference aims to provide a platform for research scholars, industry professionals, policymakers, and faculty colleagues to discuss their synchronized ideas about contemporary issues and advancements in the field of global business. This year's theme focuses on intersection of technology, sustainability, innovation in a globalized world, and would be a testament of how igniting minds through their thought-provoking ideas can play an important role in this VUCA world. We are providing quality research opportunities to both full-time as well as part-time research scholars in our doctoral program. And we believe in the idea of theorizing practice and practicing theory, wherein we connect with policymakers as well as corporate world to resolve their problems and mutually learn in the process. As a responsible academic institution in the management area, we believe that we have to provide an ecosystem to young scholars wherein they can come together, learn not only from experts, but also from their peers. Platforms in the form of conferences like GBRC bring together various stakeholders to network and collaborate with each other in various research pursuits. So I have to finish quickly, so I'll just take 2 more minutes. We also hear this phrase quite often in academics, that publish or perish. So which of these you would end up with would depend upon 4 more P's, that is perseverance, patience, process, and most important, passion. Publication, just like any other skill, has to be acquired over time. If you have to become successful as a researcher, you should enter in the habit of writing. Then slowly and gradually it becomes skill. It becomes your skill, and finally it becomes your craft. So with these words, I would like to thank DCU Business School Ireland and University of Southampton, Malaysia, for accepting our request to become our academic partners for this conference. Center for Research in International Trade as knowledge partners, Sage and Emerald Publishing as research partners, and Khadi India as an associate sponsor for this conference. I'm pleased to share that we successfully completed pre-conference workshop yesterday, which included 2 impeccable workshops by Professor Michael Dowling, DCU Business School Ireland, on use of generative AI in business policy and research, and by Professor Shilpa Madan from Singapore Management University on experimental methods in business research. I am pleased to share that we received over 200 research papers from faculty members and research scholars, out of which 112 papers have been selected to be published, to be presented in this conference in 7 management tracks. We have also collaborated with 6 journals of repute, including Foreign Trade Review, a prestigious journal of IIFT, in which few selected papers would be sent for prospective publication. We understand that young scholars want hand-holding in terms of selection of journals, writing styles, and other important aspects of publication to aid scholars in better understanding the publication process. We have also organized a panel discussion, Meet the Editors, which is post-lunch today, wherein 5 editors from different reputed journals will share their experience and provide guidance to the young researchers. As uncertainty in international business is rising due to various factors, a plenary session on navigating economic disruption, strategies for resilience would be another interesting addition to the conference, which we are having tomorrow, in which people from academia, policy making, and industry would deliberate on the economic and geopolitical changes faced by world and how new strategies can be formed to tackle such disruptions. Finally, conference would end up with valedictory session wherein words of wisdom would be shared by leaders of industry as well as policymakers, followed by prize distribution to the best paper awards in each of the 7 tracks. There is a cash prize of 15,000 rupees and a conference best paper award with a cash prize of rupees 50,000, which are sponsored by Sage. So with these words, I once again welcome you all for enriching and thought-provoking deliberations in the next 2 days. Thank you all and welcome you. Thank you.
I would now request Professor Joshi to release the 3rd edition of the biannual magazine of Research Pulse, which is back with an updated worldview on infinite vistas in the field of research that seeks to uncover.
So this is a magazine which is an initiative of our students. Research Pulse. It's a biannual magazine. Thank you.
I would now like to take this privilege to invite our guest of honor, Shri Gupta, Managing Director and CEO, ONGC Videsh, to kindly address the gathering with his valuable insights.
So, 8 minutes. So I think, let me, take this opportunity to invite him. Let me tell you, because these people will not tell you, we are extremely proud today that Rajarshi has been our student, and we have a formal session will not tell you that he was our student, because once upon a time in 2002, IIFT had a program for ONGC. And, for the people who are to be posted in abroad, and this OVL were a very special purpose vehicle. And, and that time the young officers, and they came through a very tough process in IIFT. 800 people were, appeared for the interview or for the examination. Out of only 20 were selected. So 21 batch and 22 batch we had it. So I'm telling you how the, visionary the ONGC was that point of upon a time. And I am so happy to see him. There is a saying in Sanskrit, if you get defeated by your student, this defeat is to be celebrated. And when a professor's student become bigger than the professor, it is to be celebrated. Thank you so much. And Rajarshi, please start.
A very good morning. It's very difficult to speak at this stage. When you come back to the alma mater, when you see your professors, your mentors, Kutti Madam, Rajan Sir, Joshi Saab, Mulati Saab, so many people, so many memories come flooding back. Tough times, enjoyable times, fearful times that will we make it, because our grades were always being monitored by MD Raha Saab. At that time, we had Pravir Sengupta Saab as the director. It was something, and we came back, people, the students who are sitting here, they come after graduation, 2-3 years of experience sometimes. We came back after about 7, 8, 10 years of experience. So we were about 34, 33, 32 that time. So I remember one day, one professor was very strict about timings, and we all entered. So that guy came in about 10 minutes late, and he said, sorry, you can't enter, you're 10 minutes late. But he was very sharp. He said, no, sir, I'm 10 years late. So kindly to allow us. So the pressure with the normal batch who were younger, and more energetic, but the passion and the eagerness to do well, understanding that this is once in a lifetime opportunity which needs to be leveraged by us. We need to learn more and do everything that's possible. So 38 courses over 18 months and then the project by 38 different faculty members, and being judged by each of them separately was a unique experience. First time a public sector did this and sending us away for 2 years fully and to a reputed institute like Indian Institute of Foreign Trade. It was really very, very visionary of Rahasab at that time. And I'm happy to share with you, most of them have reached very good positions in the organization. Some have stepped outside the organization and they are doing well. And I'm again thankful to all IIFT faculty members, staff members, all the support members at that time who helped us through the tough times when we wanted to learn something. Coming to today's topic and why the relevance, India still spends a very less amount of its GDP on research. It's, I think, about 0.6%. And if we have to realize the vision of the Honorable Prime Minister of Viksit Bharat by 2047, I do believe that the spending needs to reach at least 1.5 to 2% of the GDP. Today, India's GDP is crossing 4 trillion, and very soon it's still fifth, but we'll reach the fourth position. Japan is at 4.4, probably in a year's time, and third would be in another couple of years to 3 years. So by 2028, 30 will be number 3. Now, a large economy growing at 6 to 7%, with 1.45 billion population, requires a lot of energy. It requires a lot of capacity building. It requires a lot of facilitation and regulatory support. And it also requires to be much more competitive in this world. When we came in IIFT, once quote from the director was there in many rooms. And that quote at that time said, no business is domestic. Every business is international. And today we have Professor Elena sitting here. They would be much more knowledgeable on this. If we have to be successful today in business, research is the backbone, and any domestic business will now need to compete with the best in the international. We are also seeing a few other mega trends, if I may call it. I believe that one mega trend is climate change, and that will define a lot of our day-to-day activities, a day-to-day way we do business. I believe that most of the research, the innovations, the developments, the patents would come into climate change and how we handle it. India is a unique case. We import about 5.4 million barrels of oil every day. And we are about 87-88% import dependence of crude and about 50% for gas. If the country has to grow at 6, 7, 8% to achieve the Viksit Bharat goal, and it has the potential, it has been demonstrating it for last decade, then it will require much more energy. And also do remember that though transition is happening, clean energy is the requirement of the times. Oil and gas and the fossil fuels will remain for some more time. But that doesn't mean that it has to be produced indiscriminately. It means that we have to do more with less. We need to be much more efficient. We need to ensure that the carbon emissions are lesser than what we have been doing. There are multiple ways of doing that. We have CCUS, carbon capture, sequestration storage. We also have ways of methane capture. We have already put in all our sites, fugitive methane capture, which captures methane from the engines which are coming out. We are now going for dual feed crackers. Also do remember that out of the three fossil fuels, gas, I believe gas is the transformational fuel. So most of our economy, most of our energy landscape, most of the GDP would be pushed through the gas utilization. Gas, we have about 50% in India. And going forward, we have also the government of India has done also 5 things, very important things to promote gas. One is it has increased the regas terminals in India from 25 million ton per annum to now 55. The infrastructure of pipelines was only 16,000 kilometers. It is going to 33,000. All the states are now connected. We have CGD. So CGD now covers 99% of the population. And we also have the gas exchange, wherein people can produce gas in Tamil Nadu and sell in Gujarat and vice versa. We also has government has now allowed that any new gas that is found anywhere in India, the firm which finds it will have pricing and marketing freedom. So this will boost the usage of gas in the energy basket. Another very important thing that we in the energy industry are conscious every day, and we call ourselves energy soldiers, because kindly also do remember that we have about 90,000 retail outlets today in India, across India, and every day, I'll give you a figure, it sounds so surprising. Every day, about 7 crore people, 70 million, Professor Elena, 70 million people go to these retail outlets every day with the expectation that their vehicle will be filled up with petrol, diesel, or CNG, or renewable charging throughout India at a appropriate price, at a sustainable source of energy, and it will be available. So throughout COVID, throughout be it floods or any other calamities, natural calamities, this has to be ensured. And we believe that if the economy is growing, wanting to grow at 7-8%, the energy requirement will grow at 2 to 3%, maybe 4%. So the pie is increasing, and sources of energy will coexist together. So other big mega trend that I would like to touch upon is artificial intelligence. This was known to us, ML, LML, LLL, and many things are going on. What we are now understanding is, what first 2 things that it will do is, I'll give an example from my industry. We have our most difficult physical discipline, that's drilling. And it was a male dominated discipline because it required a lot of physical strength. But now we have rigs which are being operated by consoles like a cockpit, and you can just be away from the rig by the push of a button. We are now seeing a lot of lady drillers coming in, young females coming in and taking up those jobs. What does it mean is, what in all industries across India, we'll have much more gender equality. Our population is about 50-50 male, female, so we'll have much more female coming into the workforce, and which will help the economy grow. So it was going to remove the physical strength required in many industries, in mining, in oil and gas, in other steel industries, because automation is going to come, AI is going to come, and that will ensure that participation of both the genders are equal in the workforce. Another thing that AI will do is, we have been harping. Today I joined ONGC in 89, so it's 36 years, and we heard from our seniors that तुम्हारी जितनी नौकरी नहीं उतना तो हमने casual leave छोड़ दिया. So these were the dialogues used to see, and experience was always experience, 25 साल experience, 25 years, 30 years. You will see now that beyond 5-10 years, the internet will be enough to gain the experience. You do hands-on in your discipline, and after that, a 5-10-year-old person who has done their best in their field would be equivalent to a 20-25-year-old if they are keeping the track of the latest development in their discipline, if they are reskilling themselves. So it doesn't mean that youngsters only will have a chance 20 years later. Youngsters will get the chance and have to be given the chance to lead verticals, to lead industries, to lead subsidiaries, to do new things. They have the better ideas. They are much more capable in AI. And we in ONGC, what we are doing is we have created a digital self of 60 sharpest, youngest people from all disciplines. And we are giving them training. We are bringing in some outside experts. And we are creating in our industry for the first time what we call neutral positions. It doesn't mean you have to be a geoscientist or a production engineer or a drilling engineer. After 5-10 years, most of the positions we want to create neutral positions, people who have that experience and that mindset to deal with ambiguity, deal with the volatility. Today, ONGC Videsh is in 19 countries, including India. And what we are seeing is that though there is a big fervor for nationalism across the world, and nationalist leaders have been chosen, but still globalization is the mantra going forward. And the world is still very much interconnected. We see what's happening in the last 2 months on different fronts as the geopolitics unravels over this period of time. The supply chains after COVID and post Russia-Ukraine conflict have been disrupted. New supply chains are being established in all sectors. There is a South-South collaboration, there is a East-West collaboration. And today, another thing that I want to share with you is that it's a more era of collaboration and cooperation and less of competition. As the industries and the geopolitics is so volatile, and the prices, the demand, the way people are adapting to new technologies, it is very much required that we collaborate with each other. So research, be it in research, be it in technology, be it in know-how, be it in capacity building, we are now reaching out to the biggest in the business to come to India and invest along with ONGC Videsh. I was in US last week, wherein we met all the 7 oil major heads, and there is a very big interest to come to India. The market exists in India. More than 25% of the incremental energy requirement will come from this country. So there, everybody wants to have their place in the Indian market, in the Indian landscape. So we will see that it will be a place where we will see much more international firms coming in and investing in India, believing in the India story. And today, brand India is its highest. But also remember that every country has its own uniqueness. It has its own culture. Like we work in places which is plus 54 degrees and minus 50 degrees in the same world. So different culture, different language, but a common language through research, through innovativeness, through collaboration has to be developed. And there is a need today that like-minded countries talk to each other and collaborate. And Kotti Madam is here, where India is entering a regime of lot of large and big FTAs. This will open up the trade, and this will help all countries who are involved. Going forward, it is the younger generation. I want to tell you that one of the most interesting places is to be in India. We are seeing reverse brain drain now from all over the world. You are in the right institute, you are in the right place, you are in good hands, and do your best. And I believe opportunity will knock. It is your duty to go on putting in your effort, and you will get the opportunity and exposure, and it will come to you. I have been through this process, and I was very fortunate and very blessed to be here today. I thank IIFT again, all the people here, my faculties, my mentors who have taught me whatever I am here today. So thank you so much. Thank you.
So with your profile, IIFT thanks you for providing your valuable insights that hails for nearly 35 years of an extensive experience across various aspects of upstream oil and gas industry. As a CEO and MD, since July 22, you have effectively led the company through geopolitical challenges and played a key role in boosting production that has operated jointly in jointly operated projects of the company. We thank our proud alumni. So Mr. Gupta has to leave. So thank you so much. I would now request Professor Joshi to address the gathering. As a distinguished academician and eminent author and a renowned international trade and management expert, Professor Joshi is the Professor and Vice Chancellor of Indian Institute of Foreign Trade. Professor Joshi has consistently, meritoriously, has had an academic background and was awarded various scholarships. He has received his education and training from Harvard Business School, Boston, IIFT, Rajasthan University, National Dairy Research Institute, and is a recipient of IIFT prestigious gold medal. Professor Joshi has also had a scholarly aptitude and a flair for writing. He has authored highly popular books of international marketing and international business, published from Oxford University Press, and has been editor of the prestigious quarterly journal of IIFT Foreign Trade Review, published since 1966. Professor Joshi has also spearheaded several seminal research studies and with practical implications sponsored by central and state government and multilateral organizations. He has had a transnational exposure and has been associated with several multilateral organizations like World Bank, Asian Development Bank, UNCTAD, International Dairy Federation, and Asian Productivity Organization. He has conducted training programs for corporate executives, government officials, and has customized programs for IAS, IFS, ITS, IES, ISS officers, and foreign diplomats. He has conducted research and training programs, teaching and consultancy in several countries, including US, China, Russia, Canada, UK, France, Germany, Switzerland, Italy, Belgium, to name a few. As a chairman, Committee of Bureau of International Standards, Professor Joshi spearheaded developing Indian Standard IS 19000-2022. He is one of those highly sought after management professors in the country and an expert author and speaker in conferences, workshop, and television channels, and several national and international fora. We welcome you, Mr. Joshi.
Thank you so much, Tuhina. I always say that क्या इतना लंबा introduction ना पड़े है ना, so people will know once you speak. So our distinguished, speaker, researcher today, Professor Eileen Spasova, Dean Henley Business School, Professor Gurmeet Singh, who have come from Fiji, Pro Vice Chancellor, my distinguished colleagues, Professor Ashish, Head Research, even more distinguished colleagues, Professor Rangarajan, my senior colleague, Dr. Katti, Professor Murli, the person who has got tariffs on his hands, and even, more distinguished people like Saikat and many others who have come, from Calcutta, Professor Sardi, and more distinguished people who have come to IIFT from far and off to attend this, Global Business Research Conference. As you are aware that, IIFT has been a trade institute wherein we had a systematic system of organizing, conferences on areas of economics. So I think it is probably first deviation because now we classify ourselves as a business school. So it's a conference which is basically focuses on the core areas of management, integrating the global business aspect of that. And therefore, it's a global business conference that we thought of organizing. And let me compliment to Professor Ashish and his team. There is another Ashish, don't think we have one, two, double engine. And then Preeti, Registrar Gaurav. So all of them worked overnight to make it possible in a very short span of 5-6 months at the most. 3 months. She is saying 3 months. So I think credit goes to them. So give them a big hand first. And as you are aware, Rajarshi was talking, the young researchers are, brighter. They are very trendy. So they chose a very trendy topic. It starts with beyond boundaries and reimagining research for globalized world. So I think let me question how globalized the world is today. It is globalized because we have got speakers from across. And now I think something which has become, Professor Elena will agree to disagree with me, that we have grown with the theories of globalization, that everything is globalizing. In case you are not part of the global value chain, then you don't progress. In India, prior to 1947, because we also fought the battle of independence, the only thing was Swadeshi. Swadeshi was protectionism. The self-made products. So when India used to say Swadeshi, people across the world used to oppose us. But now I think the Swadeshi or made in America has become a big word to make that country big again. And credit goes to the researchers. Professor Biswajit will agree with me that the American researchers have done thorough work to convince the President of America. It's very difficult to convince him that erecting insurmountable tariff barriers is probably the only way for economic growth. Now, this was a theory which we used 100 years back. How Britain used the theory anyway, you come from Britain, that industrial production will take place in Britain. It has to be marketed across the world. So the basic trade theories thought, comparative advantage then came. Then a lot of competitive advantage theories came. So they all thought that, high-end job will be in America and Britain, and low-end job will be in developing countries. And this is how the Chinese economy got developed. That we'll do the high-end job and all things will be China. And today, if you see, the China's share in world manufacturing is 38%. India's share is 3.8%. And America, do a research and find out. Share of the next 9 top manufacturers in the world, their share in manufacturing is less than share of China. आप समझ गए? हमारे यहाँ शिवजी ने तांडव डांस किया. क्यों किया? क्योंकि उन्होंने भस्मासुर को कहा कि जहां हाथ रखेगा वो भस्म हो जाएगा. And ultimately what happened? You know it better, let me not tell you. And it is exactly now the same theorists are telling that now the manufacturing job should come back to America. Number one. B, the major American import over 70% is of the services imports and not the manufacturing imports. Economy in all developed countries, manufacturing is less. And the factory architecture 100 years before is very different, was very different than the today's factory architecture. Those you have not seen, kindly go to Amul plant in Anand. The capacity is 450 metric ton every day chocolate. And only 20 people are working. So, bringing manufacturing also does not bring back the jobs. When we talk of the global value chain, even after COVID, we started of talking the regional value chain and local value chain, and India went one stop ahead. The district, every district need to be self-contained. So, so we are living in a globalized world, it's debatable. word is deglobalizing. But more than that, under no circumstance the word can be, it was 100 years before. Forget about the Tolstoy's theory, under which, Mahatma Gandhi developed the Tolstoy form in South Africa. Those days have gone. We are still interdependent. It's easy to say that the word is deglobalizing, but one way or other we need to depend on that. Even if, but what we have seen is that the one thing is I don't want to talk about it. The whole world is grappling with a tariff war. And 1945, when the organizations came, UN came. The basic purpose of UN was to prevent the war. After World War, II, there are bitter memories when hundreds of thousands of people were killed by dropping of two little bombs. Little boy was the name, and then you see. So no war. So despite of UN, there are wars. We brought out GATT. The primary function of GATT was reduction in tariff. And if you see, the tariff got reduced. I don't think that the reciprocal tariff is a new thing to the world. In 1934, America had the Reciprocal Trade Act of 1934. And in this act, what was said is that the US President Roosevelt, was empowered to negotiate with other countries to reduce the tariff. History repeats. The more we change, the same we become. हम कहते हैं हमने कुछ नया कर लिया, है ना? Murli is smiling because he's doing a lot of research on tariff. Now, free trade, basically the FTA came so that when the WTO did not work, that and it is not Donald Trump. The dispute settlement body of WTO is dysfunctional for more than 1.5 decades. It is not Donald Trump. And if you see the protectionism, the CHIPS Act of America and the Inflation Control Act, which was brought by Biden, over 400-500 billion US dollar was given for manufacturing. I need to say that it was a very wise act on his part to bring back the high-end manufacturing in America. Anyway, let researchers do a lot of research. But now putting FTA came so that you should be able to produce anywhere and market anywhere. And the most effective FTA was either Europe, EU. Anyway, Britain came out of Europe, Brexit. And in a democratic country, there are people who favor it, not favor it. And after Brexit, I was told that in a year, 3 Prime Minister of Britain was, had to leave. 3 finance ministers had to leave. So there is no sustainability of politics in Britain. But when it comes to developing countries like India, they want your product to be sustainable. We got a friend called Donald Trump. He said that goodbye to Paris Act. And FTA, especially if you look into NAFTA, in 1974 was a most, effective FTA. So always trust on foes than the friends. Trump says, I'm equal to friends and foes. And 25% tariff first was posed on Mexico and Canada. And it's a very integrated, complicated supply chain, where a product travels 5 to 10 times between the countries. When the product comes, you charge 25%, you become incompetitive. It will give rise to the products where these charges are not being done. Say to begin with is South Korea, which makes Japan to begin with. And then these products become competitive. China, you put 10, फिर आपको अच्छा नहीं लगा दोबारा 10. In case you favor China, and what we say, if you favor China and you do de-dollarization is 100%. So things are becoming very complex. Things will become complex, but some sort of globalization will remain. So what I feel is, the research should identify the nuances and realities of the present world. A few days back, he said the national language of America is English. Are you aware? Do you know which country will benefit the most after America? Not Britain. India has got double to 4 times number of English speakers than Britain has got. 1.42 billion people. 20% speaks. 28 crore people in this country speaks English. Britain, only 6.5 crore people. India is amazing. India is incredible. And in Britain, people know only one language is English. In America, they don't know anything other than English. In India, on an average, people know more than 3 languages. We have got a regional dialect, regional language, then there is a dialect. 2, there is a Hindi, which is another connecting language, and English, I think people know here. And not only that, the English of the people of India grammatically is much better than English of any person anywhere on the earth. I repeat, say Britain. So, madam, you are welcome to this wonderful country. These people, the B school seems small, but let me tell you how great we are. If you study in Harvard Business School, London Business School, you achieve greatness. But to be CEO of Google and Microsoft, you need to be born in India and have a primary education here. Because, you know, the theory of competitive advantage talks of that it is a difficulty which makes you entrepreneurs. No big B schools produce entrepreneurs. The richest man of Britain was not born in London. He was born in the desert of Rajasthan in India. Lakshmi Mittal, the owner of ArcelorMittal. You have seen the big fish eating the small fish, but Indian small fish eats the big fish. The acquisition which has taken place. So I think with this, welcome to all the new researchers, not only to the globalized world, but the new global disorder. Not the order. I'm sure many people will get angry with me. Satyam vadet nanratam, sach bole, jhoot na bole. Na vadet satyam priyam, apri sach na bole. But being a professor, if I don't do so, I fail in my duty. So I think, you know, you need to identify the nuances and carry out a research. Thank you. Namaskar, namaskara, namaskaram, vanakkam.
I would now like to take this opportunity to invite Professor Elena Spazova, Dean, Henley Business School, University of Reading, who has come all the way from UK to address the gathering at IIFT. Welcome to IIFT for your keynote address. I would briefly like to introduce Professor Elena B. Spazova. Professor Spazova is the Dean of Henley Business School and Professor of International Business. She joined Henley in 2009 with over 10 years of corporate strategy consulting experience, working with organizations across Europe and North America. Professor Elena has held a number of leadership positions over the years and led the institution to growth of a number of work-based executive programs, both nationally and internationally. In her leadership capacity, Professor Elena has also headed major change management and education innovation projects. In her current role of Dean, she works to provide vision, direction, and leadership of Henley Business School. Her research interests include strategic issues and challenges faced by organizations on an international scale, drivers of international competitiveness and performance with particular focus on exports and SMEs. Her research focus has strategic issues and challenges faced by managers in SMEs and multinational corporations on an international scale, international business strategies of international firms, global value chain, dynamic and entrepreneurial capabilities as critical firm-specific advantages, driving international expansion and competitiveness, governance modalities of cross-border expansions and operations, ownership versus control issues, and the effects of economic disintegration on international competitiveness of firms from exiting the country, the case of Brexit. Her industry experience is also to mention for Her management and strategy consultant, she was management and strategy consultant at PricewaterhouseCoopers Canada, corporate and operation strategy development and implementation, process and profit improvement, and enterprise development, project management, and economic analysis, market research, and feasibility analysis. Her client portfolios hails from strategy development projects for large Canadian and US international corporations, international new venture strategies of SMEs, and feasibility studies for government agencies in Canada, Cyprus, Macedonia, and World Bank projects in post-war Bosnia. IFT welcomes you. Presentation. Something's happening.
Yeah, start.
We can work with the site if not. Right, there we go, we're live. Good morning, everyone. You all skipped breakfast today. Right. Dear Professor Pandey, Professor Joshi, honorable guests, speakers, and colleagues, it is a great pleasure and honor to be here with you today. Thank you for having me. As I was introduced, I'm a professor of international business, but just to give you a bit of a flavor of what that means for me personally, I have 3 passports that I can tell you about. And I lived and worked and studied in 6, 7 countries around the world. I'm through Global Trotter. I spent at least 3 months a year on the road, visiting new countries, developing partnerships, collaborations, and meeting lovely people like this time in India. I truly believe that the world is our oyster, and the more we talk to each other and the more we collaborate, we can make the world a better place. I'm also the Dean of Henley Business School at the University of Reading, one of the oldest and largest business schools in Europe. That's our beautiful Greenlands campus on the banks of the River Thames, and we also have a big campus in the town of Reading. The significance of this particular campus is just at the end of the World War II, in 1945, a group of people came together and put
their heads together and said, we won a war, but we have a new war that we need to win, and that's a war of rebuilding the country and the economy. And hence, Henley Business School or Henley Management College at the time was established to retrain the returning soldiers to build the economy and the society after the devastation of the war. I'm sharing this with you so that to share with you that applied business research and education, solving real problems in real time, is very much part of the DNA of Henley Business School. We're also one of the early internationalizers, if you wish, because very quickly after the Henley was established, we welcomed students and participants from around the world and started establishing our campuses. And I'm talking as early as the 50s and 60s. So international business is not just something that we research and teach, but we've lived and practiced since our inception. And as a result, we are also the home of the world-renowned Dunning Center for International Business, which I'm also proud to be member of. We're founding fathers, John Dunning, Alan Rugman, have advanced the field of international business, which now is more relevant than ever. So thank you for the opportunity to share my thoughts and reflections on this wonderful world we live in, that it's becoming increasingly uncertain, volatile, and unpredictable, but also wonderful world of opportunities. And I would like to echo Professor Joshi's words, this wonderful country of India and its enormous potential and opportunities that it offers. I'm sorry to say this is my first visit to India. I don't know why, but I can promise you it's not my last one. I'm coming back in June and then in August again, because I can absolutely see the amazing opportunities and the potential for collaboration and co-creation of new knowledge and new solutions that our world desperately needs. As you can see, my topic of this speech is global value chains. And I've chosen that because I think global value chains is one of those frameworks that enable us to make sense of what's going on in the world and why the decisions in another White House, not that one, impact every one of us on a daily basis, and why decision-making for business is so difficult and challenges these days. I would like to unpack a little bit and apologize for the IB scholars in the room because you know this, and go back to the very roots of international business research and frameworks, and remind ourselves why international business exists, why companies are interested in going international. And it's very simple. They're looking for new markets beyond their home market. They're looking for resources because they're not enough at home or they're cheaper somewhere else. They're looking for efficiencies in whatever way you want to define them, whether it's cheap labor cost or access to cheap infrastructure and so on and so forth. And they also go abroad to avoid tariffs and be part of trade association, trade blocs. Global value chains emerged particularly as a result of that desire or aspiration of multinationals to look for efficiencies. And that's where the rise of China came, with the abundance of cheap labor, where the manufacturing started to be decoupled and fragmented across the world. It is that pursuit of location-specific advantages in this case that brought that decoupling and fragmentation of different parts and components of manufacturing that enabled multinationals to relocate them in other parts of the world and downscale their commitment. Initially through FDI, but increasingly to non-equity engagement through contractual relationship, which worked even better for the multinationals because A, they didn't have to invest, but also made it much easier to exit those locations because they simply had to break a contract. They didn't have to close a factory. They didn't have to downsize and deal with technology and relocation of staff. And I'm sharing this because I hope that will put what I'm going to say later in a context of why the implications are so big, but also why they're so immediate. That some of these leakages, although we live through the golden era of globalization, and we are truly interdependent and interlocked, equally, because of the contractual relationship of the global value chains, it's much easier to move around for these multinationals and find new opportunities or relocate somewhere where those factors are still favorable and where the location-specific advantages are more favorable. So we're talking about companies really looking to create, reduce the risk of the global chain, to reduce the vulnerability of global value chains. We saw a little bit of this trend in the first Trump administration in the White House. The multinationals realized the risk of overdependence on China. And I will say a bit about China because it's important for this part of the world. Well, it's important for the whole world, but particularly I would believe in Indian context. And they realized that overdependency on one location is a risk, especially if your own country is not in a very friendly relationship or increasingly unfriendly relationship. So diversification of value chains came in place. I totally agree with the statement that no business is domestic. Even if the company in India is not directly involved in any imports and exports, they're probably part of the value chain of another Indian company that is. So what happens in that sector and industry, directly or indirectly, impacts pretty much every business. And even if that's not the case, your consumers in India will be impacted, their purchasing power, by what happens in these global value chains. Firms of all nationalities seek to minimize this uncertainty and are actively considering how best to address resilience in these multinational global value chain structures, such that they are less dependent on geopolitical changes while also achieving a degree of efficiencies. These firms are trying and create redundancies. And what we mean by redundancies in international business jargon is really to avoid future blockages to supply chains due to unexpected shocks and feared decisions of politicians, not just in the US, equally in China, in UK, we had the Brexit. This thing happened, we have natural catastrophes as well that disrupt global value chains and make us more dependent and vulnerable to these. Firms with extensive networks of suppliers, while initially more affected due to the complex nature of their supply chain, made a faster recovery after the natural disasters, some of the natural disasters in certain parts of the world, the research tells us. Therefore, what multinationals now are looking for is diversification to new locations, but not simply transferring what's been in one part of the world to another part of the world, but they're now looking at multitude of locations and leveraging where that opportunity is. What lead firms, or we call flagship firms, these are the firms that sit at the heart or at the top of the global value chains, are really want to know is how to increase geographical diversity, but also keeping costs low. We know that diversification, multi-location increases costs. So how do you balance those two challenges? The most significant target has been China's role as a central location in global value chains. All developed economies have become overdependent, and Chinese, particularly manufacturing, has become a critical part of global value chains of Western multinationals. Although Western multinationals went to China initially for efficiency seeking, increasingly as the middle class grew in China, China is now equally important for these multinationals as a consumer market. So increasingly looking at China as a market seeking entry, but also presence in that economy. But equally, China is now advancing technology, and partnering with Chinese multinationals, again, helps or collaborates, although in most cases competes with Western multinationals. So this multitude now of reasons why multinationals go and work around the world is becoming more complex, because while due to efficiency, multinationals need to move out of China, they can move out of China because now Chinese market is a significant part of their portfolio and significant source of their revenues. So how do they balance these opposing drivers of their sustainability at the end of the day and their success? So, my white questions are kind of throwing out their research questions for the younger part of the audience. Just to link a bit more into what does this mean for the Indian context. Looking at some of the interdependencies of China-US direct and indirect trade, it has actually decreased significantly the direct exchange between the two nations. The China share of US imports dropped to 14.6% in the 12 months to July 2023 from its peak of 21.6% in 2017. However, if you look at what is happening with the trade between US and Vietnam and US and Indonesia, there's a direct correlation, and research have told us this, there is a direct correlation between these two things. And if you dig a bit further where this growth in Vietnam and Indonesia came from, and you track it down the FDI routes and the sources of the FDI, you will see that majority of that was Chinese FDI into Indonesia and Vietnam. Companies will always find way around tariffs and protectionism. And we in IB know this is nothing new. We've seen it in the US, in the case of US and Japanese car makers back in the 70s and 80s. So the playbook is the same, right? We just have new actors sitting in the head of these states. It's the same case with Mexico. I was in Monterrey 2 weeks ago and had conversations with our counterparts there. The number of Chinese multinationals that flooded Monterrey, and Monterrey is a big manufacturing hub, just 2-3 hours from the US border. It's unbelievable. They're putting pressure on the infrastructure, but they're also putting pressure on the labor force, both in terms of skills, poaching talent, but also in terms of wages and costs. So I asked our colleagues in Monterrey, are you worried? I asked the businesses we met with, and they said no. Yes, the tariffs will go out, and the minute the effect of those tariffs hit the consumer in the US as in increased prices, it will be a different story. So again, these things are cyclical, but they do move the flows of trade, the flows of capital around the world. And businesses and us as those that try to support policymakers and decision makers in companies have a role and responsibility to help them make sense of it. And then based on the past experience, but also where the economies are going. Few other statistics. Vietnam and Indonesia is not an accident, although Chinese investments set in Mexico, Hungary are also very significant. They're very geographical proximity and the infrastructure linkages between these countries and China are very important. This is where the things are made easier. And this is not just purely because of Trump tariff policies. This has already been underway because even as the manufacturing grew and the demand for labor grew in China, the wages grew, and Chinese companies started looking for cheaper source of labor anyways, and they start looking at the neighboring countries. Few more examples, but I'll skip through some of them. Just to share a bit more, maybe academics who like numbers, right? And put things in perspective. This is China's outward FDI, and you can see a significant part of it, almost 70%, is into Asia. Also, there is another statistic that I'm sure most of you are aware that the trade in Southeast Asia, it is 80% of the trade is within Southeast Asia. So what this tells you is the interdependencies with the Western developed economies are maybe not as big for the region, but because this is the fast-growing region, as the Vice Chancellor was saying, this is where the most populous part of the world is. This is the growing middle class. This is the fast-growing GDP, but also this is where the highest percentage of under 25-year-olds lives. And that makes this a very potent region, including India. We also have the Chinese investment in manufacturing in the ASEAN countries, reached 24 billion in 23, making up a third of its outbound foreign direct investment. So obviously this region is very important. Now to think and putting this is another way of looking at US created a monster 30 years ago when China opened. The question is, are they creating now a different kind of and I've used the word monster in a positive way, it's not necessarily a negative way. Are they now pushing China and China's policy in a different direction? What does that mean? What does that mean for the region, for India as part of that region? Things don't happen in isolation, right? If you tip one end of the scale, the other is not going to stay stable, right? The other one has to tip either up or down, depends on how much weight you put on. These things have implications, and in global value chains, there are a multitude of implications. You need to go through where the value is created, where the value add sits, identify where you want to be, where is the hotspot that you can leverage your competence and competitive advantages. The nature of restructuring of global value chains, it can happen in two ways. We have the relocation of existing activities, as I mentioned earlier, from China. This will be directed to countries with existing industrial clusters, where there is a stock of supplier firms and an appropriate infrastructure incentives, as I mentioned, Indonesia, Vietnam, Malaysia, some to name just a few in the region, but also the efficient and seamless transportation links and trade facilitation systems, where free economic trade zones exist, or the governments have favorable policies that support relocation of global value chains. And then the second pathway is new greenfield global value chains that are being established that do not have a prior dependence on China, as the global value chain firms seek to create redundancies. And this is where the opportunity exists. It kind of goes into where I started my presentation. This is where the opportunities exist for India. Because the relocation follows one kind of logic, but relocating investment is not the same as relocating global value chains. And investors will look for new opportunities where it will reduce the dependencies and the risk of the previous global value chains. So what does this restructuring of global value chains means for India? India will struggle with being a preferred destination for relocation global value chains away from China. We've seen happening already with the Apples of the world that are trying to reduce their dependency on China. They're trying to relocate to India. All sorts of challenges, not necessarily originating from India, but from the Chinese themselves, but also from the US and what they can and cannot do around the world. Challenges with limited transportation links with China and the ASEAN countries, quality of transportation infrastructure, manufacturing clusters that need to be further developed, and shortage of high productivity manufacturing workers. In other words, a skilled labor, and I'll come back to that in a minute. So the real question, in my view, really should India be a relocation destination for Chinese-based global value chains? And this is, by the way, not global value chains of Chinese multinationals. This is global value chains of Western multinationals, global organizations, including Indians, that are now trying to reduce their dependency and their risk. So if we have a very quick look, and you will know this much better than I do, but I like putting things in context and perspective. If you look at India's performance in terms of infrastructure and logistics performance, you can see that progress has been made and the progress is in the right direction. Things have been improving, but compared to some of our main competitors, your main competitors, as in countries, it's still lagging behind. So there is some work to be done in that area. Again, not as a relocation destination necessarily for the Chinese parts of the global value chains, but for attracting foreign direct investment for multinationals looking to diversify, looking to create redundancies in their global value chains. This is another one I quite like, is the puts in perspective in the economic diversity of Asia's supply chain growth hotspots. And it looks at a couple of things. It looks at, that's where I started, why multinationals go abroad: natural resources, technological readiness, and FDI attractiveness. The size of the bubble tells you what is the level of attractiveness in each one of these. And you can see that there's some really big bubbles there, but also some multicolored bubbles, which means that these countries offer a multitude of attractiveness, not just one. Unfortunately, India is just red, which is the FDI attractiveness, which is good news. That's brilliant news. That's, means that the institutions are working, that multinationals find easier to work here, that the policies, right, the government, the stability of the government, the level of uncertainty, but not necessarily because of technological readiness, which is the case of Malaysia, and or natural resources, which is the case of Indonesia. So again, we don't live in isolation. We don't exist in isolation. For the better of the worse, the globalization of the past 30 years have made our economies much more interconnected, which means that we also compete against each other on multitude of parameters. A few more statistics. This is India inward FDI by sector and region. We talk about the country, but as the speakers mentioned earlier, it's a huge country. It's a wonderful, diverse country. And both in geography and population, but also in terms of development. So in the map, you can see that a big part of the FDI, inward FDI, goes to the West Coast. Some on the West, but you have the middle where not much is happening. Again, what are the opportunities there? And what does that mean for the country's economic development? Where is the potential or untapped potential to develop further? Areas of investment, there's some, again, very good news there. We have almost 20% in manufacturing, 70% in R&D. This, again, is a testament to the high-skilled labor force that exists in India and Indian companies that are knowledge generating. They're not just knowledge replicating. And in multinationals, obviously interested in tapping in those, in collaborations and co-creation of knowledge. But then we have retail sales offices, but that is, it's 4 sectors accounting for 70–80% of FDIs, and not much happening. So again, that sectoral balance, you don't want to be economy dependent on 4 or 5 sectors because you need all of them. And you need that independence. So something to think about, researchers, of how do we unlock that? How do we bring everyone on the growth journey and prosperity journey? I think, my 10th visit in India, it's a land of opportunity. I know there are a lot of challenges, but my takeaway is that it is a land of opportunity. There's so much potential to make the most of these uncertain times and what's going on around in the neighborhood, in the region, but also in terms of the country and the global politics. There's some research-based insights there, and so I didn't cite the papers because the slides will be too busy, but I'm happy to share. New policies are needed to focus on attracting clusters of suppliers. We know agglomeration works for international attracting FDI, enhancing transport linkages, and higher regulatory standards and compliance need to be put in place and enforced. So that provide reassurances to multinationals and also consumers. But if we look beyond geopolitics, globalization, global value chains are just part of the story. Let's not forget that's not the only part of the story, or the only story that we need to worry about or write about. Early on, one of the speakers mentioned automation, digitalization, and AI. Your alumnus, Mr. Gupta, was talking a little bit about this. This is all new disruptive and advanced technologies are direct threat to a cheap labor-based comparative and competitive advantage for countries. That's where I'm coming from. We don't want to be a relocation destination for Chinese multinationals so they can move their cheap labor production. Automation is replacing jobs, even in China. It's making it obsolete and not creating new jobs. So we have increased number of unskilled labor or low-skilled labor with no other opportunities that will create social unrest. But also, these are consumers in the society. You can have a growing economy with high unemployment rate. So the implications of these are, again, it's a threat, but also an opportunity for a country like India with so many STEM graduates, excellent researchers in that area, to really push the boundaries, to really advance and adapt and adopt advanced technologies to move the needle. But let's not forget that we don't leave anyone behind, and we bring. And this is where the second factor comes in. And yes, you can say I'm biased. I'm an educator as well as a researcher. And I always say education is really, really critical. And it has to be a source of competitive advantage. And this is where the real potential for India is, with one of the highest percentages of under 25-year-olds. These young minds are hungry for knowledge that can drive the growth and the prosperity. At the same time, let's not forget about that existing workforce that will need to reskill, that will need to upskill. AI is not a threat to jobs. AI will just create different types of jobs. So let's figure out what those different types of jobs are, and let's train our workforce to work. And it will be on a global scale, because again, we don't exist in a vacuum. In the world of uncertainty, volatility, unpredictability, Twitter politics, stability is what businesses want. We see it in the UK, we see it in Canada and US. At the end of the day, what the business will tell you, we don't care what policy it is, just stick with it. So we can actually plan and do business and drive our businesses in the future. What makes it really difficult is when those policies keep changing on a daily basis. I think this is again another opportunity for India and Indian politicians and government to provide that internal stability that at least internally businesses, and that makes it a safe haven also for attracting FDI and foreign multinationals to come and collaborate here. And finally, I think the ultimate success will depend on the triple helix approach. And what I mean by that, it has to be a multitude of stakeholders coming together, working together, government with institutional and policy frameworks, businesses, and also education through research and training of the future workforce that will enable us to tackle the challenges, turn them into opportunities, and really drive prosperity for everyone in the economy and the society. That would be the last I have to say. I have a criteria how I judge whether I've been to a successful conference. And I would like to say if I met an old friend and made a new friend and have a new idea for a new paper, it's been a successful conference. I hope you all have a successful, productive and inspiring conference, and looking forward to meeting you today. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Elena. It was quite an insightful session and seemed like a scholar's paradise sitting on the other side of the table. I would like to invite Dr. Preeti Tang for a vote of thanks followed by national anthem.
Thank you, Dr. Tuina. It is my privilege and honor to extend a heartfelt vote of thanks as we conclude this inaugural session of Global Business Research Conference. I'll start with a small quote. At times, our own light goes out and is rekindled by a spark from another person. Each of us has a cause to think with a deep gratitude of those who have lighted the flame within us. So first and foremost, I would like to express my sincere gratitude towards our guest of honor, Shri Rajshri Gupta, Managing Director and CEO in ONGC Videsh Limited, for giving his valuable time and visionary insights. I would also like to express my sincere gratitude to Professor Elena Spasova, Dean of Henley Business School, University of Reading, UK, for providing us new perspectives on global business challenges and opportunities. Your insights have been truly enlightening and valuable. And I would also hope that all the participants will be following her mantra for success of the conference. My special gratitude to Professor Rakesh Mohan Joshi, Vice Chancellor IIFT, for proactively taking the initiative to organize the conference, demonstrating leadership and commitment to the academic endeavors. I extend my sincere thanks to Professor Rangarajan, Head Kolkata Campus, and Professor Sardhi, Head Kakinada Campus, for their support and guidance. My sincere appreciation to Shri Gaurav Gulati, Registrar IIFT, and his team for providing the administrative support. I would also like to sincerely thank Professor Ashish Pandey, Head Research IIFT Delhi, for his constant support. Heartfelt thanks to Dr. Ashish Gupta, the co-convener of the conference. I would extend my appreciation to our academic partners, University of Southampton, Malaysia, and DCU Business School, Dublin, our associate partners, KVIC, and research partners, SAGE and Emerald. A special thanks to SAGE for sponsoring the Best Paper Awards, which will be announced in the valedictory session. A big thank you to the organizing committee, faculty colleagues from Delhi, Kolkata, Kakinada, and GIFT City campuses, and research scholars for their dedication and meticulous planning in ensuring the smooth execution of this event. Your hard work behind the success has made all the difference. To our participants and attendees, whether you have joined us in online or in person, your engagement, your questions and discussions will make sure that this conference is an interactive and dynamic experience. Last, but certainly not least, a heartfelt thanks to our technical and support team who have worked tirelessly to ensure seamless sessions and an overall great experience. Thank you so much.
May we all stand for the national anthem. Thank you all. We might now proceed for the technical sessions. High tea and technical sessions then.